and welcome to this special radio town hall meeting on whistleblower protection and whistleblowing legislation in Nigeria by the Progressive Impact Organization for Community Development, PRIMOC, in partnership with the African Center for Media and Information Literacy, AfricMIL. I am Adaobi Obiabumo, the program manager at PRIMOC. Both PRIMOC and AfricMIL are civil society groups with a mandate to promote good governance, information literacy, and participatory democracy in Nigeria. This town hall meeting has the support of the MacArthur Foundation. Please watch us on our live stream on Facebook at Official PRIMOC. If it is convenient for you, the spelling of PRIMOC is P-R-I-M-O-R-G. Today's program seeks to advance Nigeria's anti-corruption war through effective whistleblowing and renew the advocacy for whistleblower legislation. The program has brought together resource persons who will discuss the bottlenecks of the existing whistleblower policy and the need for the National Assembly to enact a whistleblower law. Recall that as part of efforts to fight corruption, the federal government in 2016 rolled out a whistleblowing policy to deter fraud and embezzlement of public funds, and among other vices. Besides the initial gains made, the whistleblowing policy of the government has shown its frailties and failures to nip public sector corruption in the bud. Rather, most citizens are getting wary and skeptical about reporting corrupt acts. The pertinent issues remain that whistleblowing is an essential tool to fight corruption anywhere in the world, and Nigeria cannot be an exception. Those who are bold enough to expose corruption must be protected, while persistent demand for a whistleblower law must continue. For you out there, how do you rate the impact of the whistleblower policy in Nigeria's anti-corruption war since inception? Would you still report acts of corruption knowing that there is no law for protection of whistleblowers? And how can the current administration be galvanized to pass the whistleblower bill into law? You can begin to send your views to 0902-265-6167. That is 0902-265-6167. And remember that you can watch us live on Facebook at Official PRIMOC. Again, the spelling of PRIMOC is P-R-I-M-O-R-G. If you just joined us, this is a special radio town hall meeting on whistleblower protection and whistleblowing legislation in Nigeria. And you are right on time as the conversation is about to begin. My guests for today are Barrister Ebuka Anekeago, Principal Partner, Ebuka Anekeago & Co., Mojirayo Ogunlano, Human Rights Lawyer, Digital Rights Activist, and Principal Partner, MON Legal. Godwin Onyacholem, Program Manager at the African Center for Media and Information Literacy, AfricMIL, and Laraba Mure, Assistant Secretary, Nigeria Association of Women Journalists. Yesterday, AfricMIL partnered with PRIMOC and held a training for lawyers on whistleblower protection advocacy. Let me now bring in Godwin Onyacholem to tell us more about the training and the challenges of whistleblowing in the country. You're all welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, for the benefits of Nigerians, could you help us understand the challenges of the whistleblowing policy since inception?
Well, as you rightly noted, the policy was introduced in 2016 and generated plenty of enthusiasm. People who are interested, and saying this is a novelty in trying to achieve good governance through curbing corruption. It was the first time the Nigerian government would invite citizens to join in the fight against corruption by speaking out against, wrong practices that they notice around them. So, and ever since it has remained a policy, and that's a major stumbling block for effective implementation. So it's not become a law yet. So, and we are in the process of trying to see that it becomes a law so that at least, people will be much more incentivized to report wrongdoing. So the major problem is that it's not a law, it remains a policy, and so people are skeptical and wary of engaging it.
What aspect of that whistleblower bill at the moment are you advocating for? Is it for protection or are there other components?
Yeah, all the a standalone whistleblowing legislation, that will be made up of all the features of protection. So that's what we want. It's standalone. There are different kinds of laws, labor laws, environmental laws, and all kinds of laws. But for whistleblowing to be effective, to be functional, you have to have a standalone legislation. That's what we are advocating for, to get a law to protect people who stick out their neck, who stick out their neck to report wrongdoing, fraud in both public and private sector.
Could you give us snippets of what transpired yesterday?
Okay, yeah. So yesterday we saw that. I mean, we understood, from the concept of whistleblowing that it's a legal process. So we need to involve lawyers in the process of managing it. So yesterday we organized a workshop, which specifically targeted lawyers that we knew would be interested in public interest litigation, people who have bias for, to take up public interest cases.
So you said it's a legal process. Is it in terms of legislation for the bill, or for whistleblowers who want to blow the whistle?
Yes.
That they need a lawyer to guide
exactly. The whistleblowing as an anti-corruption instrument itself, to engage it itself is a legal process. At every point, at one point or the other, not necessarily at every stage, but at one point or the other, you require the services of a lawyer. If you decide to be a whistleblower, yes. Okay. So and that's why we brought in lawyers and then trying to get them to understand what whistleblower actually means.
All right, I would come back to you, but just hang in there. I still have Ebuka Aneke-Agu, principal partner, Ebuka Aneke-Agu & Co. Could you tell us what your assessment of the whistleblower policy is since inception?
Okay, thank you for having me. I think one of the challenges the policy has had since 2016 is because there is no law backing it up. And if you recall, it wasn't a tool to fight corruption per se. When the past administration of President Muhammad Buhari came into office, according to him, he discovered there was no money for some developmental projects. So in order not to borrow excessively, he initiated that policy. So it wasn't a long-term policy to fight corruption. It was an immediate policy to see how the government of that time can get money to execute some projects. That was why it initiated that policy. And people started reporting missing funds, and funds were recovered in unusual places like in Sockaway, in water tanks and other places. And it was limited to only financial aspects. Whistleblowing does not cover other aspects, like somebody disclosing information about a terror attack or something. So it was mainly to see where the government can get money to execute its programs. And that was why that is the problem that the policy had. Because if the government of that time of President Muhammad Buhari had the intention of using this as a tool to fight corruption, they would have sponsored an executive bill to have a law to guide it.
But for someone to blow the whistle on misappropriated fund, is that not, or for someone who commits that act and another person blows whistle, is that not an act of corruption?
Pardon?
If you said it's not a tool to fight corruption, just to recover money.
It was mainly to recover money for the government of the
Recover
day.
money from where?
From
stolen funds.
Stolen funds.
That on its own is an act of corruption, right?
It is.
So it is a tool to fight corruption.
Yes, it is. Why I'm saying that why it suffers some setback is because the government of that day didn't see it as a tool to fight corruption. It merely saw it as an intervening policy to see where it could get money. He told the President Muhammad Buhari told the whole world, or whoever cares to listen, that there was no money when he came in, when he took over from the Jonathan administration. That was why he initiated it. Because I felt that if it had felt that this will go a long way to fight corruption in the country, they would have initiated a proper program, sponsor an executive bill to have a law to back it up. In the absence of any law backing it up, that's why the whistleblowing policy has suffered some setback since then.
Okay, thank you for that. Now that the government has realized that acts of corruption is systemic and endemic, Don't you think that we need that legislation? And why has the government not prioritized the need to get a whistleblower legislation?
We need it. We need a legislation on whistleblower. There's no two ways about it. But just like when we were having a program yesterday, everybody wants to cover his or her own interest. If there's a legislation on whistleblowing, would mean that some of the big guys or the politicians will be the culprits. So I think one of the reasons why the government has not deemed it fit to have a law is that they feel that law might come back to hurt some of the players in the political field.
So would you say there's a conspiracy somewhere for us not to have this legislation?
There is, because if you measure from 2016 till now, you ask yourself, where haven't we have a legislation on whistleblowing? Your guess is as good as mine.
Okay, let me get to Godwin Onyacholem. He has asked from 2016 till now. But in 2022, we had the Federal Executive Council approve the draft executive bill. Where are we with that bill?
Well, the draft bill is still lying somewhere in the Federal Ministry of Finance. They need to send it back to the presidency so that the presidency can also send it to the National Assembly for a quick passage. I think the problem, as pointed out, it's about, the lack of interest. People want to, cover their territories. Nobody wants to be seen, to be, people who there is the absence of the political will, because you can't tell me that you made a policy in 2016 to checkmate corrupt practices and other forms of illegalities, and then you couldn't even make an executive bill, send an executive bill to the National Assembly to make a law around that policy. So it's about the absence of the will to fight corruption, whether in the past government or in the present government. The will is not just there, and that is the truth. If the will was actually there, there will be a law by now to say, okay, this is it. This is
political will from
National Assembly members. It's a major both at the federal, both at the executive and the legislative levels. The will to fight corruption is lacking. It's not really there.
Okay, thank you for that. So we need to advance our conversation with both the executive and the legislative arm of government to ensure that we get this an all-important piece of legislation out there. But while we are waiting for that, as a lawyer, Barrister Ebuka, what do you think lawyers can do for whistleblowers?
Yes, lawyers have a role to play in encouraging whistleblowers. First of all, to sensitize whistleblowers about their rights. I think to even demystify the word whistleblowing, we should know where the word is derived from. People that like sports here, especially football, we know that in a football match, the center referee is giving a whistle to blow against any infraction. If there is a throw-in, the center referee will blow. If there is a foul by a player on another player, the center referee will blow a whistle. That is where the concept of whistle blowing comes from. That if you see anything wrong, you have to blow your whistle. That it is assumed that everybody has a whistle, and our mouth is our natural whistle. So if you see anything wrong in the society, blow a whistle. So number one is that some whistleblowers do not know their rights. And just like all of us have mentioned, in the absence of any law, they are not forthcoming. They feel, we don't have protection. There are no protection. But I don't totally agree that there are no protections for whistleblowers. Because there's no law, one-stop shop law for whistleblowing policy. But you can always fall back to the Constitution. If you look at the Constitution, Section 39 provides for freedom of expression. If you go back to Chapter 2, with this on fundamental objective and state policy, you see Section 15, Subsection 5, that says it is the duty of the state to abolish all corrupt practices and abuse of power. That's Section 15, Subsection 5. even though that chapter, the Supreme Court has said is not justiciable by virtue of Section C6, paragraph C. But it still offers protection. Journalists, Section 22, it mandates them to improve, to hold governments responsible.
Now you talked of freedom of expression, but some would say that yes, it is good for you to speak, but your freedom is not guaranteed after you have made that speech.
No, it's guaranteed. We are a democracy. I think you are making reference to the quote by former Ugandan dictator. You have it's not absolute, but freedom is guaranteed before speech, after making speech in a democracy. But it's not absolute. We agree there are some limits where you cannot express, but it's not proper to say it's not guaranteed after you make a speech.
But we've had whistleblowers who are facing different form of reprisals as a result of their speech.
We understand that. That is where lawyers come in the absence of any legislation, to say you can. It is even the duty of the state to abolish all corrupt practices. Section 15, subsection 5. So you can speak. You can blow your whistle if you see any infraction. That's where you can come in to say them. Section 39 says you have freedom of expression. Freedom of Information Act gives you the right to receive information. So there are laws we can tell them. In the absence of any law on whistleblowing, there are other pantheon of laws that protect you.
All right, thank you for that. For you listening to us, you have heard, aside from the whistleblowing being an anti-corruption tool, it also speaks to freedom of expression. Now I have in front of me Mojirayo Ogunlano, who is a human rights lawyer and a digital rights activist. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
I can see you're smiling.
I was smiling when he was speaking because I have some contrary position to what he was saying.
Okay,
especially when you're talking about freedom of expression. Now, most of the cases I've actually taken on pro bono cases, and strategic litigation cases are on this same Section 39 of the Constitution. Yes, the Constitution may say you are guaranteed that protection, but what is the reality on ground for journalists and media practitioners, for instance? What is the reality? The reality is that they have been victimized because they spoke. They have been victimized because they shared information that is very important to the public. For instance, I don't know if you had seen the recent judgment that we got from the Federal High Court, where we have seen a lot of journalists have been killed in the past, starting from Delegiwa. And when we went to the court, we went to tell the court, why is it that the government does not discharge its, deploy its instrument of state to investigate the death of journalists? Why do you underplay the death of journalists? Yes, they have the right under Section 39, but they die because they are practicing, because they have the guts to go ahead to practice their profession. So I don't totally believe that in practice that right has been protected by the Nigerian government. So we have a lot to do if we're talking about that.
The importance of this legislation.
Exactly. That is why we need this particular legislation, this whistleblower legislation. Because when you have a law, the law gives a very a comprehensive outlook to the problem in issue. For instance, we are going to be, if you have a whistleblower policy or a legislation, you will have the issue of reprisals that will be taken care of, because I've researched and read and watched where whistleblowers have gone through hell just because they reported. You see where somebody lost his employment. You see where somebody began a tool for repression and oppression in that same institution where they are working at, because they decided to blow the whistle. So when there is a legislation, it gives a framework, it gives a structure as to this is your right under this particular legislation. When you do this as a whistleblower, this is what the government owes you. Not only the government, they tell you the person you are reporting also owes you a duty, and that duty is that they mustn't come for you. The duty is that they must not for any reason victimize you. And when they feel that duty, the legislation will now provide punishment for that particular act. So that's something that I noted, that that a legislation is very, very key for anybody to feel a little bit protected.
I can see the passion which you're speaking, and also the fact that you said that you render pro bono services to some whistleblowers. Thank you for that. But what more do you think lawyers can do for whistleblowers?
Okay, so for instance, lawyers play a very huge role, and that huge role starts from the moment the whistleblower noticed the problem. So it's not something that if you go ahead and blow the whistle, then you now fall back to a lawyer. No, you don't do that. Immediately you find an issue that you want to blow the whistle on, you need to contact a lawyer.
But
and then
lawyers, their services are usually expensive. What if that whistleblower does not have the funds or the means to pay a lawyer?
Okay, so it's very important to try your best and do your research. And the research is that you need to identify pro bono lawyers. There are a lot of them. I can give you that without even speaking too much. There are a lot of lawyers who render their services pro bono. And I've been one. I've been doing it since 2014. Pro bono has been a part of my trajectory, for instance. So you need to actually locate somebody and tell them this is the problem. This is what I saw this, because every lawyer is bound by confidentiality. Whatever you tell the lawyer must protect you. The lawyer cannot share it with anybody without your permission. So non-disclosure is ingrained in every lawyer, and it is part of the rules of professional conduct. So if you, by mistake, you tell your lawyer a particular secret and it is out there in the open, then you have a right to even take an action against that lawyer before the legal practitioner's disciplinary committee. So you tell the lawyer, then the lawyer should properly advise you. Is this the appropriate action to take? This is not the appropriate action to take. Then the lawyer also tells you the measure of protection that is available for you. And the lawyer also tells you the kinds of steps that you should take. It is even important for the lawyer to develop a strategy for you. And then both of you will know how to run ahead. And because for every step of the way, the lawyer is important. The lawyer is important in negotiating with government. The lawyer is important in deciding if there is a reprisal, for instance, or there is any form of problems. The lawyer can then come in. And that huge role starts from the moment the whistleblower noticed the problem. So it's not something that if you go ahead and blow the whistle, then you now fall back to a lawyer. No, you don't do that. Immediately you find an issue that you want to blow the whistle on, you need to contact a lawyer.
But and then lawyers, their services are usually expensive. What if that whistleblower does not have the funds or the means to pay a lawyer?
Okay, so it's very important to try your best and do your research. And the research is that you need to identify pro bono lawyers. There are a lot of them. I can give you that without even speaking too much. There are a lot of lawyers who render their services pro bono. And I've been one. I've been doing it since 2014. Pro bono has been a part of my trajectory, for instance. So you need to actually locate somebody and tell them this is the problem. This is what I saw this, because every lawyer is bound by confidentiality. Whatever you tell the lawyer must protect you. The lawyer cannot share it with anybody without your permission. So non-disclosure is ingrained in every lawyer, and it is part of the rules of professional conduct. So if you, by mistake, you tell your lawyer a particular secret and it is out there in the open, then you have a right to even take an action against that lawyer before the legal practitioner's disciplinary committee. So you tell the lawyer, then the lawyer should properly advise you. Is this the appropriate action to take? This is not the appropriate action to take. Then the lawyer also tells you the measure of protection that is available for you. And the lawyer also tells you the kinds of steps that you should take. It is even important for the lawyer to develop a strategy for you. And then both of you will know how to run ahead. And because for every step of the way, the lawyer is important. The lawyer is important in negotiating with government. The lawyer is important in deciding if there is a reprisal, for instance, or there is any form of problems. The lawyer can then come again to protect you, fight for your fundamental rights, for instance, for the enforcement of your fundamental rights. So at every point in time, you cannot downplay the role of a lawyer.
Thank you. You cannot downplay the role of a lawyer. The lawyer is there for sensitization. The lawyer is there to provide legal advice and services to that whistleblower who is confused. I know a whole lot of things happen in the MDAs and in other private sector also. Perhaps you must have seen one or two things and you're confused. Who do I talk to? Where do I go to? You just heard my guest. You need to talk to a lawyer. Pro bono lawyer, not all lawyers. Some will charge you, it will cost an arm or a leg, but then get to discover who that pro bono lawyer is that would render the services. Thank you for that. But let's quickly shift to a journalist who, by nature of the work that she does, is also a whistleblower. Laraba Murray Assistant Secretary, Nigeria Association of Women Journalists. Thank you for being a part of our program.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, ordinary citizens continue to grow cold on reporting or exposing corruption. How dangerous is this to our country, and how does it affect the work that you do?
It's actually very concerning when the trust that the citizens are beginning to feel that they can't trust the government in which they are, or the country in which they are in. So it's actually very dangerous because it undermines democracy. And then if they are beginning to grow cold, it also makes the work for the journalist more difficult, because where do you get the source from? Where do you get the information from? You get it from the people in the community. You get, because just like what you mentioned in the NDAs, you know some things are going on there. So if the trust in government institutions is going down, you see that the work for the journalist becomes very difficult. Where is he going to get the information to see how he's going to report wrongdoings, to see how he's going to report fraud? So it makes the work very, very difficult, because even for investigation, it also makes it difficult because you have to get a tip for you to even follow up on a story.
So you need to get a tip, and that tip comes from the whistleblower. We need to expand the conversation. For you out there, we need you to join in. How would you rate the impact of whistleblower policy in Nigeria since inception? And how can the current administration be galvanized to pass the whistleblowing bill into law? And if you're watching us on Facebook at Official Prime Work, we encourage you to drop a few lines and we will take your messages. Have you experienced any before? Do you know a whistleblower who is facing any form of reprisals? Are there things you want to talk about? Let's hear you, because it concerns you, it concerns myself, that's Adaobi. How can we move this country forward using the whistleblower legislation or the policy that we have at the moment? But then we're still waiting and hoping that we'll have a law at the end of the day. Laraba, could you share some the major challenges journalists face in trying to expose corruption, and how protected are journalists in today's Nigeria?
Okay, let me start with the challenges. And I'll first of all start with the lack of access to information. Government, even if we have the Freedom of Information Act that is out there of 2011, you see that it's also very difficult for journalists to even get access to that information. Yes, the act is there, but they create deliberate bureaucratic hindrances to hamper the access to those informations. That is number one. Then another thing again that is difficult, you just mentioned reprisal attacks. What if there's a source and a source is being leaked, because you don't even know how the source will go? So there's reprisal attacks possibly on the sources. There's also financial constraints, because it has to do with investigation, and investigation costs a lot of money. And then there's also threats to life. In some cases, you see that some journalists are harassed. They are harassed, they are threatened, and in some cases it leads to death. We have case of where journalists don't even have the freedom to even report cases. Recently, we had a case of an editor of First News who was catapulted from Lagos, and I don't know how true it is, but from what I heard, he was in his boxers. So what was the report about? We also had a report of a journalist from Channels Television who was also kidnapped. So these are the threats that face, challenges that face, and then we also have, I mentioned financial constraints. When there's a story and we need to pursue the story, how available are the resources made for the journalists to get those sources or get those reports?
A lot of issues there, talking about financial constraints and also information, despite the fact that we have the Freedom of Information Act.
You mentioned how protected are the journalists.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to give you an illustration, and then we'll see if that will make us know if journalists in this country are being protected. I think from 2018 to 2021, I read somewhere that there have been cases that journalist oppression over 192, and then we also have like 48. That's estimated 48 per year, and then that means Abuja again said that has that is 3 times higher across the 36 state. So then we have the laws. We have the what you call the national broadcasting laws that are out there that is also gagging, the journalists. We have the amended Nigerian Press Council, of 2019. We also have the proposed social media law that is also, causing constraints. So how protected? The lawyer said that the journalists are protected. There's freedom of expression. That's section 31 or section 39 of the Constitution. But after you say what you say, are you free to go back to your house? So that will make us know if journalists are really protected or not.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's get to Mojirayo. As a woman, I know some lawyers don't like to hear that. What is the fear? What do you think are the fears expressed by whistleblowers affecting women?
I think you're safe.
Women. Are women really faced to blow the whistle?
You are safe to refer to me as a woman lawyer. Because I'm one of the, maybe you can say maybe I'm a non-conformist in quotes, but I don't believe that we are all gentlemen. I'm a lady at the bar. I'm not a gentleman at the bar. I'm a woman, so that I must leave that. Now, to your question. Now, for women, I don't know if you had seen some reports that have shown that out of 5 journalists, for instance, women journalists or journalists, you see 3 of them are more at risk of reprisals, normally, ordinarily. And, that has been a problem for women in our patriarchal society. We know that women do not have the kind of laxity that a man can have, to some extent. And that's reasonable, considering the fact that we don't even have the kind of representation in government or in the National Assembly, for instance. We don't have this kind of representation that gives some measure of, how do I put it, some measure of confidence to the populace that women's rights, for instance, have, they are prioritized, or that women can play the same level, in the same field with men. So it's going to be even more difficult to see women coming out to say they want to blow the whistle. Because one, they have issues of the patriarchal security. There's no security when there's more of discrimination than how do I put it, than protection.
But the assertions out there that women suffer more from acts of corruption than men.
Women suffer as in they become the victims, right? Of course. Yes, it's obvious everywhere. It's obvious when.
But shouldn't that be enough reason for a woman to come out to speak?
No, that should ordinarily be a reason. But security is one thing that we know that, okay, please, men out there, please do not take this personal. Now, men feel more reckless than women. And I have my reason for saying that. There is this confidence that a man has that is powerful. And if somebody comes to you, wants to attack you, you can have that kind of measure of defense that you can have. But it's not every woman. We have some women who can actually defend themselves, even physically. But we have more women who are vulnerable. And so it becomes an issue for a woman to have that confidence or to summon that courage to go out there and report. And especially when you read the news or you hear somewhere that somebody reported, and you will notice that they are all men, and they've been going through victimization, and there is no particular legislation on ground that has given them the kind of protection that they need. So it also hinders women from coming out to doing their part for Nigeria.
Okay, the law, whistleblower law. It is very, very important for us to have that piece of legislation if we really are serious in combating or fighting corruption, like we say here. Let's also speak with Godwin Onyacholem, Program Manager at AfricMil. How can civil society organizations like AfricMil sustain the demand for whistleblower law?
Okay, so before I answer that question, I'll just go back to what she said about, whistleblowers needing lawyers, at one stage or the other. And it's very important really, because, when there is a law now, the first group of people who would have acquainted themselves with the law are lawyers. They are the first to be in a position to interpret the law. So when a whistleblower who sees wrongdoing somewhere, it's like attempting to blow the whistle. He doesn't do that immediately. He needs to talk to one lawyer or the other. And if you don't have access to lawyer, to a lawyer, you can easily reach out to organizations like Primark, Afric Mail, and say they can help you assess lawyers. You may not need to know a lawyer directly, but it is important that you talk to people who are already acquainted with the law to guide you. So that's important. So you are talking about how civil societies can, it's to continue to sustain the advocacy. There is no way we can to continue to engage those whom we know are in a position to make the law. Like, for instance, the presidency, as I said, the people who are the stakeholders, that are in a position to push the law. So that's the only way we can. There is no way, by doing what we are doing now, by talking about it, we had one, like you said, we had one session yesterday where we brought lawyers together to say, let's keep pushing out this thing so that people will understand that we need this law. If we say we want to fight corruption in this country, and ECOWAS has recognized whistleblowing in its protocol, in ECOWAS protocol ECOWAS protocol for the fight against corruption and supplementary protocol on good governance and democracy. ECOWAS has recognized that the most direct method of exposing corrupt acts and achieving good governance in any democracy is through whistleblowing.
Okay.
So and Nigeria is a signatory to that protocol. In fact, all ECOWAS member states are signatories to that protocol. So what you need now is a standalone whistleblowing law. Like I mentioned it earlier, there are labor laws, there are environmental laws, the constitution is there, section 39 that you mentioned.
And the National Assembly members are aware that Nigeria is a signatory to that.
No, they are aware. Yeah, they are aware. Yeah, that Nigeria is a signatory to that protocol on the fight against corruption.
And we still do not have a legislation.
Yes.
So what would be your advice to them in 30 seconds?
Yeah, my advice would be that, they should, summon the will really to give us a whistleblower protection law, because it's long overdue. Yes.
It's long overdue. We need that piece of legislation. Let's get to Ebuka Anekeagu. What do you think citizens can do to get the government and legislators interested in getting this act?
I think, as Mr. Godwin has said, advocacy. We should keep talking about whistleblowing. Whistleblowing is a tool to fight corruption. Corruption kills any society. It kills enterprise. It only rewards people that are involved in corruption. So as citizens, we must continue to talk against corruption. We must continue to expose any corrupt practices, be it in the private sector, be it in the public sector. That is the duty we owe as a citizen. And that was why I was saying that in the absence of any law of whistleblowing, we should not keep demanding that the right thing is done as a citizen anywhere we find ourselves. We must keep demanding that the right thing is done as a citizen while we are making efforts, while we are in the vanguard of ensuring that the executive and the National Assembly members do the needful. So as citizens, we should not close our mouths shut. Like the FCC will always say, if you see something, say something. We should keep talking.
Okay, if you see something, say something. Okay, let's quickly get your take, Mojirayo Ogunlano. Beyond defending whistleblowers under different forms of protection, how can lawyers pressure the government to get the legislation for whistleblower? Please go ahead.
Well, I think that if you are talking from the perspective of lawyers, I think one of the best ways I think of is through strategic litigation. That's what will come to my mind, because I've used it and it has worked on several occasions. But apart from that, I think that lawyers need to start having that conversation. We need to start having that conversation when we gather together as lawyers. We can do that when we have these conversations. We release this, the reports from that kind of conversation or gathering. And when we do report that kind of thing, we also can write the Nigerian Bar Association, for instance, and say, can you take up this fight for us? Because there is no doubt that anybody can be a victim of a situation where there is no whistleblower legislation. Anybody can be. It means that you are seeing something that is wrong. It means that you are seeing a corruption going on, and you refuse to talk about it. You are already a victim from the moment you refuse to talk about it because you are afraid of protection. Because When you are
Let
in
me hold it there and take this call. Hello.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, good morning. Your name and where you're calling us from? From Benin City. Let's hear you. Okay. Technology. It has a mind of its own. Please go ahead.
So I know that a lot of, for instance, some lawyers are doing their own part in their way of, for instance, filing cases under FOI, the right to even get the information in the first place. And so that also is one aspect. But I think it's high time that we started linking that to the whistleblower situation also. That when you are not protecting your people, then it becomes a problem for people to come out. So lawyers need to talk. Lawyers need to take up the fight. Not only that you should be seeing journalists or non-governmental organizations taking up this fight by themselves. Because one thing that we need to understand is the duty of a lawyer is to ensure the promotion of the rule of law. That is who you are. You are a minister in the temple of justice. So what gives justice? If somebody comes out to report on something that is for a corrupt issue, and then the person doesn't have protection, it falls back to the fact that there is injustice in the land. And so as lawyers, we need to be the vanguards. We need to be at the forefront of this kind of situation. We need to gather together. We need to talk about it. We need to move our associations, to speak about this. And then, of course, we can write government.
All right, thank you. Hello. Good morning. Please, your name and where you're calling us from. Let's hear you in 1 minute. Okay, let's hear you, please. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But a quick one. Would you be willing to report acts of corruption when you see one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much for that positive response. Thank you. While we're still waiting for 1 or 2 more calls, let's quickly get your perspective. Lara Murray, who is the Assistant Secretary. Okay, the calls are coming in now. Hello. Okay, Lara, please. How can the media push for the passage of the whistleblower bill into law? In 1 minute.
Okay, what the media can do is to we're in a media space right now. This is a good place to start conversation. So I think it's a good thing to bring media people to come in here to say their own perspective about issues. The media can do editorials, the media can do features, the media can do vox pop, the media can hold a town hall meeting like this to understand where and what are the hindrances, what are the challenges, why this whistleblowing hasn't yet been passed into law. I think that's what the media can do.
Okay, from the lawyer to the media, to you as a citizen. As a citizen, okay, we have one more citizen who wants to talk to us. Hello. Unfortunately, that would be the last take from the media, from citizens out there. Unfortunately, the network played a fast one on us today, but tomorrow is another day. We have come to the end of this special radio town hall meeting on whistleblowing. We sincerely appreciate our guests, Ebuka Aneke Agu, Principal Partner, Ebuka Aneke Agu and Co. I'm Mojirayo Ogulano, Human Rights Lawyer, Digital Rights Activist and Principal Partner, MON Legal. Godwin Onyachalem, Program Manager at the African Center for Media and Information Literacy, AfricMil, and Lara Bamiro, Assistant Secretary, Nigeria Association of Women Journalists. Thank you all for being a part of today's episode. If you have a message for us or you want to react to what you heard on this program, please reach us on 0902 265 6167. That is 0902 265 6167. Please visit the news page of our website, primorgnews.org. That is primorgnews.org for all the details of our reports and interviews. Visit our website, www.primorg.org, to get all the information about Primorg. This radio town hall meeting on whistleblowing has the support of the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, committed to building a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. Get more information about the foundation at its website, macfound.org. Many thanks to Primorg team for their wonderful work. Executive producers of this town hall meeting are Okiri Agbonsremi and Chido Oluma. Don't fail to report corruption when you see it or encounter it in any form. I am Adaobi Obiabumo. God bless you.